Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Krivanadari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Krivanadari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanacharya. Yamuna Tira Vanacharya. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanacharya. Yamuna Tira Vanacharya. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Asadhara Sadushi Shiman. His Divine Grace Shri Bhaktivedanta Smaraj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande, and all glories to these sound devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagurjatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vrijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vasakans Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Dhruvyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranitinanda Shadvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 27, Understanding Material Nature, text number 21. Śrī-bhagavān uvāca animitta-nimittena sva-dharmeṇāmalātmanā tīvrayā mayi bhaktyā śruta-sambhṛtayā ciram. Śrī-bhagavān uvāca animitta-nimittena sva-dharmeṇāmalātmanā tīvrayā mayi bhaktyā śruta-sambhṛtayā ciram. Śrī-bhagavān uvāca animitta-nimittena amala-ātmanā bhaktyā śruta-sambhṛtayā ciram. Ladies, go ahead. Bhagavān uvāca. Śrī-bhagavān uvāca. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, animitta-nimittena, without desiring the fruits of activities, sva-dharmeṇa, by executing one's prescribed duties, amala-ātmanā, with a pure mind, tīvrayā, serious, mayi, unto me, bhaktyā, by devotional service, and śruta, hearing, sambhṛtayā, endowed with, ciram, for a long time. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one can get liberation by seriously discharging devotional service unto me, and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. By executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction, and one will be freed from the contamination of matter. Please repeat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one can get liberation by seriously discharging devotional service unto me, and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. By thus executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction, and one will be freed from the contamination of matter. Purport. Śrīdhara Svāmī comments in this connection that by association with material nature alone, one does not become conditioned. Conditional life begins only after one is infected by the modes of material nature. If someone is in contact with the police department, that does not mean that he is a criminal. As long as one does not commit criminal acts, even though there is a police department, he is not punished. Similarly, the liberated soul is not affected, although he is in the material nature. Even the Supreme Personality of Godhead is supposed to be in association with material nature when he descends, but he is not affected. One has to act in such a way that in spite of being in the material nature, he is not affected by contamination. Although the lotus flower is in association with water, it does not mix with the water. That is how one has to live, as described here by the Personality of Godhead Kapiladeva. Animitta-nimittena, sva-dharmeṇāmalātmanā. One can be liberated from all adverse circumstances simply by seriously engaging in devotional service. So what's the word used here for seriously? What's the word used in the verse for seriously? Tīvrayā. And where else do we find that word? Akama, sarvakama, mokshakama, udaradi, tīvrayā, bhaktyā yajeta purusha para. And how does Prabhupada translate tīvrayā in that verse? No, not in this verse. I'm talking about in the verse tīvrayā bhaktyā yajeta purusha para. What's that? It's more or less intense. Intense. Yeah, maybe. And here it's serious. So, to be serious, you have to be intense. Intense. In other words, concentration. If the sunlight is diffused, it doesn't really affect very much. Maybe it makes it a little warmer. But if you focus it in laser, like a laser, then it can burn through metal. So it's a question of focusing our minds on Krishna. And therefore, Prabhupada said, the art of Krishna consciousness is the art of focusing one's attention and giving one's love to Krishna. What does Vaishesika Prabhupada say? One of his 4 principles. Yes. So if our attention goes to Krishna, then our consciousness goes to Krishna. Then eventually our love will go to Krishna too. We feel Krishna's presence. How can we be liberated from all adverse circumstances? Simply by seriously engaging in devotional service. How this devotional service develops and becomes mature is explained here. In the beginning, one has to perform his prescribed duties with a clean mind. Clean consciousness means Krishna consciousness. One has to perform his prescribed duties in Krishna consciousness. There is no necessity of changing one's prescribed duties. One simply has to act in Krishna consciousness. In discharging Krishna conscious duties, one should determine whether, by his profession or occupational duties, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is satisfied. In another place in the Bhagavatam it is said, Svanistitasya dharmasya samsudhir haritoshanam. Everyone has some prescribed duties to perform, but the perfection of such duties will be reached only if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is satisfied by such actions. For example, Arjuna's prescribed duty was to fight, and the perfection of his fighting was tested by the satisfaction of Krishna. Krishna wanted him to fight, and when he fought for the satisfaction of the Lord, that was the perfection of his professional devotional duty. On the other hand, when contrary to the wish of Krishna, he was not willing to fight, that was imperfect. If one wants to perfect his life, he should discharge his prescribed duties for the satisfaction of Krishna. One must act in Krishna consciousness, for such action will never produce any reaction, animitta-nimittena. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Jagnatat karmano nyatra. All activities should be performed simply for yajna, or the satisfaction of Vishnu. Anything done otherwise without the satisfaction of Vishnu or yajna produces bondage. So here is also prescribed by Kapiladeva. So here it is also prescribed by Kapila Muni that one can transcend material entanglement by acting in Krishna consciousness, which means seriously engaging in devotional service. This time, chanting and hearing is the beginning of the process of devotional service. One should associate with devotees and hear from them about the Lord's transcendental appearance, activities, disappearance, instructions, etc. There are two kinds of shruti, or scripture. One is spoken by the Lord, and the other is spoken about the Lord and his devotees. Bhagavad Gita is the former, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the latter. One must hear these scriptures repeatedly from reliable sources in order to become fixed in serious devotional service. Through engagement in such devotional service, one becomes freed from the contamination of maya. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead cleanses the heart of all contamination caused by the influence of the three modes of material nature. By continuous regular hearing, the effects of the contamination of lust and greed to enjoy or lord over material nature diminish. And when lust and greed diminish, one then becomes situated in the mode of goodness. This is the stage of Brahman realization, or spiritual realization. In this way, one becomes fixed on the transcendental platform. Remaining fixed on the transcendental platform is liberation from material entanglement. So the verse again. śrī-bhagavān uvāca animitta-nimittena sva-dharmeṇāmalātmanā tīvrayā bhaktyā mayi bhaktyā śruta-sambhṛtayā ciram. Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one can get liberation by seriously discharging devotional service unto me, and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. By thus executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction, and one will be freed from the contamination of matter. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade Sadharane. Yoga Sanyasta Karmanam Yana Sanchina Samshayam Atma Vantam Nibandanti Atma Nakarmani Nibandanti Dharanjaya. Yoga Sanyasta Karmanam, that one who gives up the results of his work, renounces what the results. Yoga Sanyasta Karmanam Yana Sanchina Samshayam, whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge. Yoga Sanyasta Karmanam Jnana Sanchina Samshayam Atma Vantam Nikarmani, that he's not bound by works. Atma Vantam Nikarmani yoga sannyasta karmanam, jnana sanchina samshayam, atmavantam the karmani, nibandanti dhananja. That he's not going to be bound by his works. Bound by the works means that we actually think that we're a part of the material nature. As soon as we, Krishna abhihira mukha bhogavan shatare, nikatastat tat japitiyadare. That as soon as we turn our face away from Krishna, then Maya is right there to slap us down. So there's many ways of turning one's face away from Krishna, but one of them is to be attached to the results of the work, and the other one, which is after one is freed from the attachment to the results of the work, one still has doubts whether Krishna is God or not, or whether I'm God, or others are God. So therefore, there is a gradual progression, and that gradual progression from the stage of conditioned life to the stage of liberation, to the stage of pure devotional service, is defined in many different ways, so we can see it in many different angles, and therefore we can get what we're trying to achieve is a perspective on what my position is presently in this material existence, how much I've developed spiritually. So that's our first business. Well, actually, our first business is to analyze how others have developed, how others are conditioned or freed from material nature, and how others have developed in their spiritual existence. And the aim of that is we have to know who to take shelter of. Shelter of means who to see the example, or whom to see the example, and who to follow instructions. The two instructions are more important than the example in some ways, because only we can understand what the example is if we understand what the instructions are. So hearing is the first thing. Then we have to see what people are doing. And then we can see whether they're doing what we've heard. Then for those who are doing what we've heard and repeating what we heard, then we have to take shelter of their instructions, because that's what's in Scripture. Doesn't require some extraordinary mystic power or some extraordinary charisma. No, one who's repeating what Krishna is saying with the realization is because they're actually manifesting it. How do we know if someone has realization? Because they're actually demonstrating by their activities and by their words what is being Krishna says in the Scripture and what his devotees say in the Scripture. Then we have to see who to make friendship with. Now, friendship in the material world is extremely difficult, real friendship, because we've come here to compete against one another. And therefore, even someone is our brother, someone is our son, we're envious. We don't want them to make advancement. And what to speak of our friends. If one friend is getting better than another or richer than another, we try to figure out how we can slow them down. Only in spiritual consciousness can there actually be real friendship, just like with the gopis. They're unlimited gopis and manjaris, and they all love Krishna. But they're not envious of each other, because when one gopi loves Krishna more than they do, then they get even more pleasure. And they make advancement by appreciating the love that the other gopi has. Otherwise, there's no way of making advancement in spiritual life without appreciation for the love that others have for Krishna. And Srimati Radharani, although she's the most loving to Krishna, the most anxious to please Krishna, but she doesn't think herself to be the greatest devotee. She thinks herself to be lower than all the other devotees. So therefore, even the smallest amount of devotion that another devotee has, she's completely overwhelmed by appreciation for it. Therefore, no one can compete with Srimati Radharani because she loves everyone unlimitedly. And is always increasing. Therefore, making friendship is essential. And as a matter of fact, if we're following all the instructions of the higher devotees and we're not making friendship with others, friendship means that others are walking on the same path as we are, and we try to help them, and they try to help us. Without that feeling that, well, there's actually desire to elevate others to a higher level, and they have the same desire to elevate us to a higher level. And therefore one can actually exchange, one can actually be honest with the other devotee without fear that they're going to misuse that honesty. Then one can actually help the innocent people. Under the direction of the higher authority, then one can actually help, one can develop friendship. And if we have friendship, then there's something question of bringing people into the Krishna conscious family. If it's only superior and inferior, or in reverence and kripa, then where is the friends we have? So therefore, the example of the higher authority, the instructions, is not simply to reach Krishna, it's also to reach each other. If we can't reach each other, we're never going to reach Krishna. Satam prasangam amavirya samvido bhavanti rikarna rasayanam kata tajyo shvarashvavargavarmini shadaratira bhaktyā nukramishati. It's in the association of devotees that we can actually relish Krishna consciousness. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido. Actually appreciate Krishna's heroic activities. Bhavanti rit karna. Then it can actually enter into our heart. What can enter into our heart? We're trying to remain steady in Krishna consciousness, so that in the association, whoever the devotee is who's chanting, we're actually listening with the same amount of appreciation that we would listen to anyone. So that takes a tremendous amount of advancement in Krishna consciousness, a tremendous amount of shelter over devotees such as Srila Prabhupada, who could actually appreciate everyone's chanting, who has the same quality of Srimati Radharani, because he's directly in contact with such a personalities. So that we can actually appreciate those who are lower, and we know we can give them some instruction and they won't become disturbed. Why are you trying to lord it over me? Because when we realize that this devotee is not lording it over me, he's actually serving me by giving me instructions. And therefore people can readily accept instructions. I mean, anyone who's sane can accept instructions from a person who's actually trying to elevate us, trying to help us. Therefore, Prabhupada could sometimes give instructions to others which were quite heavy externally, but they'd accept it. How they accepted it is because they could feel that Prabhupada was actually doing it for their benefit. Krishna within the heart revealed it, and they can actually feel it, that Prabhupada was not doing it out of enmity or out of false ego, but doing it out of loving service to that particular person. And everyone needs a good servant, so they could accept that. And on the friendship level, we find that Prabhupada did not act as the acharya when he met his old school friends. He acted as a loving friend. He didn't try to take another mood, which would, I'm the acharya, I know Krishna, you're in Maya. No, he acted as a loving friend, and therefore they could appreciate whatever Prabhupada was doing. And for those who were superior, like his spiritual master, then he was always a humble servant. Whatever his position was, he always remained a humble servant of his spiritual master. And he never took credit, he gave the credit to his spiritual master. and to the whole disciple succession. And therefore, he knew how to act appropriately to superiors, to equals, and to those who needed help, inferiors. So that's the job of any devotee, but especially of those who are taking responsibility, is to learn those three things. We don't have to learn a million slokas. We don't have to become the greatest, get all the different positions within ISKCON, and then we become an authority. No, that is the authority, is one who knows those three things and knows how to, and actually follows those three things. Sets the example of how to manifest those three things. And conveys that instructions to those who, not only the example, but gives the instructions to those others appropriately, if they require it, to how to come to that level, acts as a friend, and accepts, remembers, absorbs the instructions of superiors. So one does not have to be in the position of always giving instructions. Instructions is specifically, maybe in a class, you give instructions, whatever, but that's class. But in general, our mood is not necessarily everyone we got to give instructions to. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Yari Deka, Tari Kaha, Krishna Upadesh, Amaya Aga Gruhana Tari Desh. He doesn't say whoever you meet, you give them instructions. No, whoever you meet, you try to help them become Krishna conscious. You serve them. You assist them in their development of Krishna consciousness. That may mean that you become an exemplary servant of your spiritual master. You become, in all circumstances. As Prabhupada said in one lecture, in Vrindavan in 1972 in the Nectar Devotion series, he said the spiritual master, he knows that actually Krishna is in his heart, and it's Krishna who's giving him all instructions. We have no independent knowledge outside of Krishna. But when one has a spiritual master, when one is connected in disciple succession, then the result is that Krishna will help us, if we desire so, then Krishna will help us remember what the instructions of our spiritual master are. And the more we become connected with our spiritual master's instructions, and with our spiritual master in disciple succession, and for us connected to Prabhupada, because if our spiritual master is not connected to Prabhupada, then he's not acting completely as a spiritual master. He's not fully engaged as acting as a spiritual master, unless he's connecting us to the disciple succession, and through that disciple succession, to the six Goswamis, to the Panchatattva, and ultimately living in the spiritual world with Radha and Krishna and their associates. So the spiritual master knows that by the mercy of his spiritual master, by the mercy of Krishna, he can remember something about Krishna consciousness and give someone instructions, his disciples. And when he sees his disciples following those instructions that he understands the spiritual master and Krishna are giving him, then he learns from them how to become a better servant of his spiritual master. So a spiritual master never considers himself exactly like he's the spiritual master. He considers himself to be a servant of his spiritual master and all the other spiritual masters. And therefore he sees that himself, he's the servant of all the devotees, and eventually of all living entities. When Srila Prabhupada was in Sweden, and Prabhupada was giving a class about how there are different levels, there are different types of persons with prescribed duties. There's the Brahmins, there's the Kshatriyas, there's the Vaishyas, there's the Shudras. And so one man raised his hand and said, Swamiji, I guess you consider yourself to be first class. And Prabhupada said, no, I'm fifth class, because I'm the servant of all the other classes. So Prabhupada didn't just say that out of, artificial humility. He actually was in love with everyone, because he saw Krishna everywhere. And Krishna is unlimitedly lovable. And when one sees Krishna everywhere, then everyone becomes unlimitedly lovable also. And if you're unlimitedly in love with someone, you're willing to do anything to please them. And therefore, that's Prabhupada's pastimes. And that's what we have to learn. How to become a friend of those who are how to always keep the acharyas within our consciousness and their instructions and example, so we can appropriately see others who are superior to us also and follow their instructions and example if they're in the same line as our acharya. If their example actually fits into the example of our acharya. Now we're free to choose anyone as our leader. It's just so, at least officially within our society, we claim we accept Prabhupada as the leader. And if we do, if we want to make any advancement in Krishna consciousness, because we have to accept that Prabhupada is at least a candidate to be a leader, if we really want to become surrendered to Krishna, we have to surrender to one of Krishna's representatives. And if at least theoretically we're accepting Prabhupada as the leader, then we have to judge everyone else according to what Prabhupada's instructions and example are. We may not understand it, and as a matter of fact, usually we won't understand it, but we have to try to understand it at least. And if we don't try to understand it, then there won't be any dadami buddhi yogam tam. Krishna will not give us the intelligence, because we're not trying to get the intelligence. We don't ask Krishna for the intelligence if we're not desiring that intelligence. And that's where the test comes in, how sincere we actually are. How much, when we're always chanting Jai Prabhupada, but how much do we actually think we should become victorious under Prabhupada's directions? Because that's what Prabhupada wants. And victorious is what? What's the perfection? Is to come to the platform that one has no goal in life save and except to act in Krishna consciousness just to satisfy Krishna. And while acting in such a way, one to think of Krishna only, I've been appointed to discharge this particular duty by Krishna. And therefore one will naturally think about Krishna. That's spontaneous, where the heart flows to Krishna, because one is actually linked up with Krishna's desires and his mission. Then Krishna will be very happy to empower us. He doesn't want to empower someone like Vrikasura, so he can touch people's heads and crack them into a million pieces. That's not what Krishna is after. He'll empower someone who wants to help others, who wants to help others come to the platform of loving everyone. Not that I love my family, I love my nation, and I hate these other people. Krishna is not going to empower us to do that. Maya is empowering us to do that. Krishna will help us progress so that one day we can come to the platform wherever we look, we see Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Not that we only see, everyone becomes four-handed. Well, maybe in Vaikuntha, but not here. No, we see Krishna everywhere, and we see everyone is non-different from Krishna. Everyone as dependent on Krishna in the material world. Everyone dependent upon Krishna in the spiritual world. Dependent upon Krishna's love. And hereupon dependent upon Krishna's energies. So, to get to that platform, Prabhupada writes in 1857, first of all, we're hearing how Krishna, satam prasanga mama virya, his glorious activities in these first cantos. That when we see the sun, if we don't remember that Krishna put it in its orbit and is maintaining its orbit, that he is Surya Narayan, he's in the heart of the sun god. He's the reason why the sun gets up in the morning. It's not that the sun has an alarm clock and he gets up. No, it's because Krishna is in his heart and he gets him up. And that's why we get up also. And unless we look at the sun and see Krishna there, Krishna how he's moving it, not that necessarily we have to imagine there's, Krishna's with a little flute in the sun. No. Just like when the sunlight comes into this room in the morning through the windows, then we know the sun's there. So when we see the sun rising at a certain time, the sun setting at a certain time, we know that Krishna is directing it. So then we remember Krishna. So that's called Krishna consciousness. Rasoham apsnu kuntiya prabhasi shasi suryo pranavas aravedeshu shabdake purusham nisha. So when we hear sound, we know that sound is Krishna's energy. And especially transcendental sound. Then we can actually have some appreciation. Everything here is Krishna's energy. Everything and everyone belongs to Krishna. And therefore, I should find out what I'm going to do with my energies to become Krishna conscious. So that's called thoughtfulness. First of all, sambandha, some thoughtfulness of how everything is actually connected to Krishna. Not just out of sentiment that they tell me everything is connected to Krishna, and then I say, oh, okay, good, it's all Krishna's. Except for what I think is mine, of course. My family, my house, my bank balance, my body, and the rest is Krishna's. Fine, no problem. Just as long as he doesn't interfere, take too much away from me, or if he's there, if he's God, maybe he can give me a birthday present once in a while. I deserve it because I'm serving him. A little appreciation is welcome. No, it's all Krishna's. Whatever he gives us is Krishna's, and therefore, now what am I supposed to do with it? Therefore, we have Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Without Guru and Sadhu and Shastra, not only we don't know how everything belongs to Krishna, but we won't even have any idea what to do with his energy. The fruit will be on the tree, and we'll be looking at it, oh, it's all Krishna's, until it gets ripe and then it rottens. We won't take any advantage of it. So therefore, studying Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, especially Shastra, because unless we study Shastra, we won't know who Guru and Sadhu are. Then, that's not the aim, to become a big scholar. I know all the verses, Bhagavad Gita 7.1, Maya Sakta Maya Parta Yogam Yunja Manaj. Oh, he's a great devotee. You can teach a parrot the same thing. Maya Sakta Maya Parta Yogam Yunja Manashaya. No, now the real critical thing is how to get out of the material world, how to get into spiritual consciousness, that I'm actually going to do this work to please Krishna. I'm going to at least do it. I'm going to accept it. Not only I find out what Krishna wants me to do, I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to ask Krishna, what do you want me to do? I'll ask Krishna's representative, what do you want me to do? And they'll tell me. They say, do you have another choice? Is there another choice? Do I have an option? And then they give us the option. Well, that doesn't quite fit either. I mean, you're God. You should know what I want. No, that one should have no goal in life save and accept, to act in Krishna consciousness just to satisfy Krishna. So what will satisfy Krishna? If we actually go through the process. First of all, we go through the process, that will satisfy Krishna. And then, if we have some example like Prabhupada, we connect with that example like Prabhupada. Of course, in every step we're supposed to connect with that example. But if we want to love Krishna and satisfy him, have no goal in life save and except to act in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna, then we have to connect with those who are actually satisfying Krishna out of love. They're doing their work out of love. If we think that I'm the ocean of love, I don't need anyone else. We're an ocean of false ego. No, we have to connect with those who are actually connected, who have that trinada pisunichena, who actually feel themselves low in the blade of grass. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked us to do that. How are we going to do it? Get down on the ground and crawl around? Ask people to step on us? Will that work? You can try it. You'll probably get a bad back after some time. Probably have to go to a chiropractor. That's about what we will achieve. But actually feel, because they're in love with everyone. That's the only way you can feel lower than the blade of grass. When you see everyone is so beautiful, so exalted, when you see everyone and everything in relation to Krishna, then you can feel humble than a blade of grass. Then one can actually become tolerant, whatever happens. Realizing, not just theoretically, but realizing, but even theoretically, accepting it is everything Krishna does is good. That every moment is perfect, and I don't have to change the world. I have to change my consciousness. So then one can actually be tolerant, and then one can actually start seeing things in relation to Krishna. Then one is past the tests. The Pandavas, the six Goswamis, everyone, they exhibited connection with the acharyas, they exhibited the test, they passed them. They were tolerant and remained loyal to Krishna and to his devotees in any circumstance. Then then their eyes were open to see how everything is wonderful and beautiful in relation to Krishna. So here it mentions something about prescribed duties. There's two types of prescribed duties, sva-dharma, those given by the spiritual master and those in the varna and ashram system. But we don't have time to go elaborately into those things. But anyhow, we're generally speaking, we have a little bit in the varna ashram system, but just as much as we can actually accept at this present time. That's comfortable, hopefully comfortable. And then at the same time, we have our duties in spiritual life. Namely, the transcendental sandwich that Prabhupada gave us, that during the morning program and evening program, we come in here and chant together about Krishna. And during the day, we try to distribute Krishna's glories in some way or another. And try to manifest, put into practice what we've heard in the morning. And then at night, when we hear about Krishna, we try to dream about Krishna. So when we wake up, we're Krishna conscious too. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yes. Hare. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You were discussing instruction, accepting, and authority. From Prabhupada's example, we see when the Gaudiya Math disbanded, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was no longer present. How did Srila Prabhupada go about executing his service? It seems maybe he didn't have that same physical shelter.
Vani and Vapu, Prabhupada had the shelter of his Guru Maharaj, always. He was surrendered. He was always inquiring what his Guru Maharaj wanted him to do, and Krishna and his Guru Maharaj conveyed it. So, whatever he did, whatever he said, was nimitta-matram bhavasavasachin, as a perfect instrument for his spiritual master in Krishna, for our acharyas, disciple succession in Krishna. So that's inconceivable to us. How is that possible? But we're a little bit of an instrument, because we come here, we get a little bit of ecstasy, a little bit of happiness, a little bit of enlightenment, but he was fully enlightened, beyond what we can conceive of. Anything else? Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande Haribol.